It's the largest settlement it's the largest settlement ever between a corporation and the U.S. government, but it doesn't exactly undo the damage from the 2008 financial crisis. On Tuesday, JPMorgan reached a $13 billion settlement with the U.S. government. This settlement claims that the bank, with more assets than any other in our country, overstated the quality of its bundled mortgages prior to the 2008 financial crisis. Now, Zach, help me understand this. What exactly did JPMorgan admit? Its employees sold loans to investors that were shakier than the bank claimed. But what else can you tell us about the settlement?
All right, so essentially, this is a settlement not over the loans themselves, but over the representations that the company made to people who were buying securities into which the loans had been packaged. So JPMorgan buys up a whole bunch of loans from somebody, creates a big security, sells this security to investors and says, hey, look, we've got a lot of good loans in here. Turns out, in fact, they don't have a lot of good loans in there, and that JPMorgan actually knows they don't have a lot of good loans in there, and that they're not as good as they're telling investors they are. And this becomes very clear when the securities plunge in value, sending the global economy into a tailspin. JPMorgan's not the only company to do this, of course. And in fact, the settlement here covers securities that were issued by JPMorgan itself and also by Bear Stearns and by Washington Mutual, companies that JPMorgan acquired on, at bargain basement prices at the height of the crisis. Now, in this settlement, there are not punitive damages for the Bear Stearns securities in particular. So that means while JPMorgan's got to make restitution for losses on those loans, those securities, they don't have to pay any extra penalties for those securities. And that's sort of the government saying, look, thanks for coming in and acquiring this company at a tough time. It's not all obvious to me why the government needs to say thank you for that when JPMorgan obviously has made a ton of money having all of the Bear Stearns stuff in-house for so long. But at the same time, $13 billion is a big number. I think this is something that to some extent maybe helps assuage some of the fears that Wall Street is totally out of control. But when you look at big statements by members of the administration, by people like the Deputy Attorney General last week, who said banks don't have a basic respect for the rule of law right now, a sentiment echoed by the New York Fed President Bill Dudley just about a week or two ago, where he said the same thing. Shaheen Nasrapur wrote this up for us. We're talking about top regulators, top law enforcement officials saying big banks don't have any respect for the rule of law or for the role of regulation in the economy. That's a big problem, and I don't think it's a problem that you fix with a $13 billion settlement, which is a significant black eye to Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan Chase. But look at all the other stuff that happened. This is just mortgage securities issued during the crisis. JPMorgan has settled other charges of violating sanctions against Iran. They're in trouble right now for apparently hiring influential children of Chinese officials in China, which may be a bribery violation. They've gotten in trouble for allegedly rigging energy markets. I mean, it's offense after offense after offense, and at a certain period of time, you've got to ask, to what extent are these things actually banks that move money around to productive sources? And to what extent are these just sort of quasi-criminal enterprises sucking the life out of the global economy? And unless we have some sort of significant rethinking of the way the banking system works, I think we're going to continue to see drips and drabs settlements for serious violations of law like this for some time to come.